As big tech is getting hammered in today's sell-off, CNBC's Magnificent Seven index dropping more than 1%. Well, there's a new emerging threat to mega caps' massive spending and America's dominance in the AI race. Deirdre Bosa digs into that for today's Tech Check. KD.
Hey, good morning, Leslie. So here's a name that our audience may want to write down: DeepSeek. This is a new, free, open source AI model that beats the latest OpenAI and Meta models on key benchmarks, and it was made for a fraction of the cost. Now, it was trained by a Chinese research lab that used NVIDIA H800s. That's a lower performance version of the H100 chips that are cheaper, more available, and tailored for restricted markets like China. Now, I've been testing it out this morning, and on the surface, it looks and acts just like OpenAI's ChatGPT. And in fact, it actually thinks it is ChatGPT. When I asked, what model are you? It answered, I'm an AI language model created by OpenAI, specifically based on the GPT-4 architecture, suggesting that it was trained on ChatGPT outputs, which, leaving aside terms of service violations, it means that entirely new state-of-the-art models can be built on what is already out there. In other words, OpenAI's moat may be shrinking. If a model like DeepSeek can emerge with competitive performance, minimal cost, and reliance on existing outputs, it signals a rapidly shrinking barrier to entry in AI development, challenging the current dominance of industry leaders like OpenAI. Based on technical tests designed to measure its coding performance, DeepSeek outperformed other models, including Meta's Llama 3.1 and OpenAI's GPT-4o. And by the way, those are the latest state-of-the-art models. And that led Andrej Karpathy, a founding team member at OpenAI, to post, DeepSeek making it look easy today with an open frontier grade LLM trained on a joke of a budget. Now, to put that budget in perspective, it's pretty mind-boggling. It costs just $5.5 million versus hundreds of millions of dollars for Meta's latest Llama model and billions of dollars for GPT and Gemini models. This all raises an important question for investors. As the AI trade evolves and technological progress stalls, is training frontier models even a good investment anymore? Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Meta, OpenAI, they have made that a core mission over the last few years as they continue to spend billions building out AI infrastructure to train ever bigger and better models. DeepSeek did something highly competitive in just 2 months with dumbed-down GPUs for less than $6 million. And guys, let's not forget this fact. It comes from China, whom Sam Altman and others say poses the greatest competitive threat to the dominance of U.S.-led AI. Now, this model is going to be tested in the weeks and months ahead, but the implication, guys, of this is just massive and will ripple through the AI community.
Wow, Deirdre. I mean, we've been talking this morning about, obviously, the CapEx that we're expecting to be spent in 2025 on exactly what you're talking about. What is the core competency then here of the Chinese? Obviously, they're not using the latest chips. They don't have the computing power. They're not even spending on that. So what are they doing well?
And yet, I know, right? And yet, you're right. They don't have all those things. They don't even have access to H100s. And yet, they have built a model that competes with the ones from OpenAI and Meta. I mean, they've done this out of necessity, using H800s, which, like I said, is a dumbed-down version of the H100s. They've been able to do this, which essentially just means that these models are becoming more commoditized than ever. As that progress, the technological progress stalls, it's all about what can you build with the existing frontier models. And this is a perfect example of what a company that doesn't have to have built all the architecture, doesn't need those high-end GPUs, is able to do simply by taking existing outputs. It also raises questions between open and closed source models, right? They were able to do so. This is an open source model. That was always the fear here with Meta's Llama, is that it gives the Chinese an advantage. It turns out the Chinese didn't even need Llama. They just needed stuff that was already put out there by ChatGPT and others.
Now, wow, Deirdre, I feel like this is going to be a huge story in 2025 and the geopolitical ramifications of all of this as well. Really appreciate it. Deirdre Bosa.
moments when a potential explosion rocked a strip mall in the Vancouver area, ripping off the face of one building. Let's bring in CTV's Craig Kraus. So, Craig, walk us through what happened here.
Well, good morning, Renee. As you can see behind me here, we're here in Coquitlam on the south coast of British Columbia, and there's yellow police tape that are covering this entire block of North Street, a very busy place this morning as many people head on their commute into Vancouver this morning. But we're also hearing that this possibly could have been caused by an explosion. And I believe we do have some footage to show you what it looked like yesterday after what happened here. You can see the facade of several businesses completely destroyed, and we're also being told that this happened around 6 a.m. We don't have any video at this time. Businesses around here are beginning to open this morning, so we're hoping to get our hands on what actually happened here yesterday, because the devastation behind us here is pretty significant as this building is completely crumbled to the ground. We have reached out to authorities to try to get an answer as to what caused this. They haven't been able to provide that at this time. All we've been told is that arson has not been ruled out at this point. And when it comes to injuries as well, that's another question that's come to mind this morning for many people watching and following this story. Authorities say that no one was reported injured, but we did speak to a business owner who said they had an employee inside when the incident happened. They managed to get out safely, thankfully, but at this time it's still unclear what caused this damage. Renee?
Craig, what will the investigation and the cleanup look like?
So that's the thing. We did see a garbage truck arrive this morning, taking a look at the scene. There's also been a security guard on site as well, walking them through some of the damage that we're looking at this morning. When it comes to the investigation, both the fire department and local police, the RCMP here in Coquitlam, say that the investigation is ongoing. We're hoping to get more answers. Again, it was a long weekend. We weren't able to get much out of police yesterday, but today's an opportunity to try to figure out what caused this potential explosion.
Really scary stuff.
Renee?
It looks like a strip mall that you'd see really across cities right across the country. So very scary. Craig, thank you very much for this. We appreciate it.
A toy store is sparking controversy after claims it's selling vapes. The shop was reported to authorities more than a year ago, but when it opened today, sales signs for tobacco and e-cigarettes were displayed.
Shutting the door on questions about selling vapes in a toy store.
So you sell vapes and you sell toys?
We try to do more business, but I can't. I can't do it for 1 year, okay? We have to close.
But I can see vapes and I can see tobacco in there.
This man told 7 News he is a worker at a Melbourne Toyland that he says is shutting.
Yeah, closing.
But today it opened with toys, vapes and tobacco inside.
Do you have a license to sell vapes?
It's a combination that has locals concerned.
Bring your kids in to have a look at the toys and get a vape on the way out.
It's very inappropriate.
7 News understands the shop was reported to council in 2023. At that time, it was found to be compliant with the Tobacco Act.
The shopfront now has a public notice for a liquor licence application. Locals saying the owner has plans to open a bottle shop.
Well, it was a toy shop, then it was a toy shop that had vapes, and now it's going to be a toy shop with no vapes, and then it's going to be a bottle shop.
The local council says reports about the unlawful sale of e-cigarettes are referred to Victoria Police. Victoria Police says the Federal Health Department is the lead agency, but they don't comment on investigations. Sarah Jane Bell, 7 News.
Well, it seems like troubles for Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau are unending. The latest, according to a survey, the vast majority of Canadians are unhappy with the Liberal Party's administration and want Justin Trudeau to step down as Prime Minister. By October 2025, parliamentary elections are expected to take place in Canada. However, after Chrystia Freeland, the Finance Minister and Deputy Prime Minister, resigned, conflict and rebellion inside the ruling Liberals Party came out in the open. In an internal meeting after Freeland's departure, up to 1/3 of Liberal members of Parliament called for Trudeau's resignation.
Can you tell us?
A survey by Lega, cited by National Post, 69% of Canadians feel that Trudeau should resign, despite Trudeau's tremendous unpopularity. The issue is not unique to him. According to the survey, 72% of Canadians expressed dissatisfaction with the federal government as a whole. Support for Trudeau's Liberals is at an all-time low right now. According to analysts, Trudeau has turned into a liability. They claim that if he continues to lead, the party's chances would only get worse, and the survey's findings back such an assertion. According to the most recent results on CBC News poll tracker, 44% of respondents favour the Conservative Party, while only 20.9% support Trudeau's Liberals. The Liberals, who have 20.9% of the vote, have a very narrow lead over Jagmeet Singh's New Democratic Party, or NDP, which is supported by 19% of Canadians. So Trudeau and the Liberals may also lose the position of leader of the opposition if voters follow the poll's results. The chances of the NDP leading the opposition may be better if the Liberals perform as poorly as polls indicate. The Liberals currently hold 153 members of Parliament. Excuse me for that. The Conservatives 120, the NDP 25, and Bloc Québécois 33 in Canada's 337-member House of Commons. With the help of the NDP, Trudeau has long led a minority government. Trudeau and the Liberals were thrown into a crisis when the NDP stopped supporting the government in September.
Nearly 5 years after the COVID-19 outbreak, China may now have a mystery virus on the prowl. According to reports, China has been battling an outbreak of human metapneumovirus, or HMPV. What is known about it? How dangerous is it? As per the information available so far, HMPV causes symptoms similar to influenza as well as COVID-19. However, unlike the two, it currently does not have any corresponding vaccine. How concerning is that? Let's first tell you more about what is known. According to experts, HMPV infections rose in mainland China over the past few days. In the northern province in China, reportedly the infection rate has shown an upward trend. On Friday, China's Diseases Control Authority said that it was piloting a monitoring system for pneumonia, whose origin is unknown as of now. The Chinese medical body reportedly also said that cases of some respiratory diseases are expected to rise through the winter. It's reportedly to establish a dedicated system that can help the authorities set up protocols to handle unknown pathogens. Not just that, according to the state broadcaster CCTV, the National Disease Control and Prevention Administration is set to establish a separate procedure for laboratories to report as well as for prevention agencies to verify and handle cases. You see, all of this is happening and is being closely looked at given the backdrop of the COVID-19 mayhem. Responding to this outbreak, the Deputy Director of Taiwan Centers for Disease Control, or CDC, has said that Taiwan is closely monitoring the virus as well. Why is that? As it suspects that the outbreak might also affect Taiwan. Meanwhile, in Hong Kong, a leading epidemiologist has recently reportedly said that levels of HMPV remained low even amid the outbreak in mainland China. But what exactly is HMPV and what do we know about it? According to the official of Taiwan CDC, it is a common type of respiratory virus that mainly causes more serious illness in young children and older adults, as well as those with compromised immune systems. In others, the symptoms of this infection are in fact quite similar to those of the common cold. Therefore, symptoms commonly associated with HMPV include cough, fever, nasal congestion, and shortness of breath. However, clinical symptoms of HMPV infection may progress to bronchitis or pneumonia and are similar to other viruses that cause upper and lower respiratory infections. Now, can it turn deadly? According to the Chinese CDC, while the virus usually poses no major risks, those with pre-existing lung conditions like asthma, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, etc., are at a higher risk of severe outcomes. How does it get transmitted? HMPV most likely gets spread from an infected person to others through secretions from coughing and sneezing and close personal contact, such as touching or shaking hands, or even touching parts of the face after touching objects or surfaces which may be contaminated with the virus. I know what you're thinking. Sounds a lot like COVID-19, right? Perhaps sounds like a nightmarish deja vu nobody wants to play out in real life. Well, the similarities are simply hard to miss. However, there is one big difference, a crucial one, that stands out. The fact that HMPV has no vaccine as of now, nor does it have an effective cure. Medical experts, in fact, saying that it's still mostly unknown to the general public, and this makes a difference when it comes to raising awareness surrounding it. You see, it may be purely incidental that almost 5 years after official cases of COVID-19 were first recorded, that China is battling another virus outbreak. However, what happened then and what happens now can be separated by one factor, the factor of transparency. You see, there are several reports, critical accounts, suggesting that China had withheld critical information in the early stages of the COVID-19 outbreak. Not just that, as per investigations that were led post-COVID-19, researchers were said to have isolated and mapped the virus causing COVID-19. This was at least 2 weeks before Beijing revealed details of the virus to the world this time around. Will that change? Can China be expected to take the outbreak of HMPV a lot more seriously? Also, exercise transparency regarding the plausible dangers that the virus may be posing in China and beyond, as well as China's plans to tackle the virus, should it turn even more severe in the coming days.
Well, the CDC is now pushing back after a health expert told me the U.S. isn't acting fast enough to contain the bird flu outbreak in wild birds, poultry, and dairy cattle. Former COVID response chief Dr. Deborah Birx told me this on Friday.
We're not testing enough, and we know from other viruses that a lot of the spread can be asymptomatic. So we're kind of have our head in the sand about how widespread this is from the zoonotic standpoint, from the animal to human standpoint. I flash back to January of 2020, and I'm hearing the same words come out of the CDC.
Like what?
Low risk human to human transmission.
Now,
our agencies are making the same mistakes they made with COVID.
Joining us now is the director of the CDC's National Center for Immunization and Respiratory Diseases, Dr. Dimitri Daskalakis. Doctor, thank you so much for coming on. I mean, those are some strong words there from Dr. Birx. What is your response to her comments about the need for more testing of the bird flu?
So first, thank you so much for having me on. Happy New Year, everybody. So I'll start by saying a really important point, which is flu is not COVID. I think COVID, as an example, was a virus that we'd never encountered. Flu is one that we've been preparing for decades, and bird flu specifically, we've been preparing for over 2 decades. So quite notably, we have been doing a lot of surveillance and testing of influenza, especially since March. So our routine influenza system, that is what we use every year to figure out what the best vaccine is and what the best strategies are for flu, has in fact tested 73,000 people to look for bird flu, and has actually found 3 individuals through that system. So along with the work that we do in our regular surveillance, testing tens of thousands of people since March, we also have been engaging with farm workers and farm worker health organizations to make sure that individuals with exposures are tested. So we know that that is the highest yield for identifying individuals infected with bird flu. So I think bottom line is that we've been doing both industrial strength work, looking at surveillance, making sure that we're getting a sense of what's happening across the country using our flu surveillance system, but also working on the ground with our state public health departments to make sure that we're testing individuals with exposure.
Well, what do you say to what she said? And I see your point about, you know, this bird flu is different from COVID. We've been preparing for this. That she's hearing a lot of the same words that she heard with COVID, like it's low risk. You know, early on, that's what they were saying. And the CDC website still says bird flu is low risk to public health. What do you say to that? And do you believe it's still low risk?
So to be clear, we say on our website that bird flu is low risk to the general population. So every time we identify a case of bird flu, we go through an entire process to really look at our risk assessment. So we look at the story, the epidemiology around that case. Is there any evidence of human-to-human transmission? And to be clear, there is no evidence of human-to-human transmission in the United States at this time. We also look really carefully at the sequence related to influenza to make sure that we see if there is any change that could potentially mean that the virus is changing in a way that could mean that it's higher risk to humans. And I think that's been really important in the work that we've been doing and will continue to do. So I think based on our, looking at the risk every day, looking at what we're learning from the virus as well as the epidemiology, that remains true, that it is low risk for the general population. With that said, there is increased risk for individuals who have exposure to animal products. So that's why so much of the work that we're doing is focused on farm workers and others who may have exposure to birds or other products that may put them at risk for H5. And we do that by doing the work that we're doing with testing, but also making clear guidance around how people can protect themselves with personal protective equipment, as well as antivirals in terms of post-exposure prophylaxis, so using medications after an exposure to prevent potential acquisition of bird flu.
All right, so there's this, there's a couple scenarios here, right? You have the Louisiana case where there was a mutation that was detected, and then you have the potential scenario of someone, a farm worker, for example, getting the flu, the seasonal flu, and also getting bird flu, and sort of the concoction of both of those leading to it being transmissible to a human potentially. How concerning is this? Do you think it's just a matter of time until it starts mutating to infect human to human?
Yeah, I'll start by saying we're approaching influenza as we always do, with great humility. Influenza is a virus that can change, and I think that the Louisiana case is a great example. So in that circumstance, we have an individual who is infected by a virus, and as that virus replicates, it can actually acquire changes, and it has done that. Importantly, those changes did not transmit beyond that person. So though we've seen those changes, they may not be enough to be what sort of generates an increased assessment of risk. Another important piece is that we work really closely with our colleagues at USDA, and when looking at the birds in that individual's backyard, we didn't see those changes. So the bottom line is that the work that we do every day to make sure that we understand what's happening with the virus as well as the epidemiology is really what helps us make that risk assessment. And like I said, we really approach this virus and with this situation with great humility, but also approach it with decades of experience in dealing with influenza.
What are the risks associated with every human case that develops?
Yeah, so I think that when we look at each case, we look at exposure. Did they have a known exposure? What was that exposure? Is there any evidence for human-to-human transmission? And we're definitely not seeing that. And is there any increase in the severity? So we really look at all of these together to help guide our public health response. And a lot of what we're seeing now is telling us, be prepared. And so we've done that by making sure that testing is available through our public health labs, but also through 2 large commercial companies that allow physicians and other healthcare providers to order tests in their practice from their offices. So that's something that I think potentially didn't come through in some of comments from some of my colleagues, that in fact, we do have commercial testing available for H5 available today. And in fact, it's been available since the early fall. I think the other part of this is that we are avidly making sure that we are prepared in the circumstance that we need to move from being prepared for a vaccine program to moving to a vaccine program. And so the work that we do every day to categorize influenza viruses has been really important, because that's how we generate candidate vaccine viruses, which are the ones that we're developing with our colleagues in ASPR in the event that we need to go from planning and preparedness to implementing a vaccine.
All right, Dr. Daskalakis, thank you so much for your time.
All right, well, President Biden has less than, a month left in his term now, but he's been pretty busy over the holidays. Let's talk about just some of the bills that he just signed into law.
Yeah, we keep hearing from some Democrats about quote unquote Trump proofing America before Trump does take office. We haven't heard Biden use those terms exactly, but we have seen Biden sign 50 bills in the last couple of days. One of them made the bald eagle the official bird of America, which apparently was not a thing, which is kind of odd when you really think about it. Another one was he did sign into law the bill that was passed by Paris Hilton. I know you and Terry interviewed her a couple days ago. It forces more federal oversight on facilities for kids in treatment and care centers. Another one that he did sign too. Let me pull it up right here. Yeah, this one stops members of Congress from collecting pensions if they're convicted of a crime. So those are just 3 of the 50 that he signed the last couple of days, Kira.
President Joe Biden had a very busy Christmas Eve, signing 50 new bills into law as he wraps up his time in office and the second Trump administration prepares to move in. CBS's Katrina Kaufman has a look at some of the measures that are now law.
The bald eagle has captivated Americans from the birth of the United States, adorning everything from the presidential seal to the $1 bill. And yet it was not the nation's official bird until now.
That should have been done many years ago.
Preston Cook, a volunteer at the National Eagle Center, could not find any documentation formally designating the bald eagle status. He urged his congressman to do something about it. Congress passed the bill unanimously, and President Biden signed it into law Tuesday.
I'm so grateful to announce the introduction of the bipartisan Stop Institutional Child Abuse Act.
Reality TV star and hotel heiress Paris Hilton has spent 3 years lobbying lawmakers for more oversight of residential programs for troubled teens. Hilton, who says she was abused in such a facility, was on the Hill last Thursday to see Congress pass the measure with overwhelming bipartisan support.
I just had tears flooding down my face. I was just so excited.
And now, lawmakers convicted of some crimes will no longer be able to receive their congressional pension. The legislation was introduced the same day corruption charges were announced against then-Democratic Senator Bob Menendez. The president signed a total of 50 bills into law Christmas Eve as his time in the White House comes to a close, with President-elect Trump set to be sworn into office next month. Trump spent Christmas morning posting about a range of topics on social media, from urging the Senate to confirm his cabinet picks to amplifying a column critical of Biden's time in office. He also wished everyone a Merry Christmas. Katrina Kaufman, CBS News, the White House.
We're told President Biden spent the morning calling some members of each branch of the military stationed around the world, thanking them for their service as well as thanking their families.